On November 14, 1998, members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming to conduct interviews with the people of the town. Over the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you're about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as journal entries by members of the company and other found texts. Company member Greg Durrani.
Our first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. We've had basically three, well, my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, the towns are spread out so far apart because of the railroad came through. It was the last place they could go before they had to refuel and rewater. And Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country, and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here. So much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that the people here were happier than in the Midwest or North Dakota, where I used to teach, because they were happy. We're glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have is, you have your old-time, traditional type ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's been the hub of where they come for their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of your land, then you can't your living. So first of all, you have to take care of your land and do everything you can.
I love it here. Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You could have put me back out there in that mess back east. Best thing about it is the climate. The cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the time it don't.
And then you have the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you'd have to be crazy to let your kids out after dark. And here, in the summertime, my kids stay out at night till 11 o'clock, and I don't think twice about it.
And then you have the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now you see, in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you'll definitely know someone they know. So it can only be 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I love it. I mean, I love to go to the grocery store because I get to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go. And I don't really mind people knowing my business because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like the trains, too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most of the time they don't. Even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bossler, but everybody in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle to them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I'm from Cody, Wyoming. April Silva, university student. Laramie's better than where I grew up, I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came here, and some of them even followed me out to the crime scene. And, well, it was a beautiful day. Absolutely gorgeous day. The sky was real clear and crisp, and it was that sky blue that, you know, you'll never be able to paint it. It's just sky blue. It's just gorgeous. And the mountains in the background, and a little snow on them. And this one reporter, lady person that was out there, she said,
well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyways?
And I said, well, this is a really popular area for people to run, and mountain biking's really big out here, and horseback riding. It's just, well, it's just close to town. And she looked at me and she said,
who in the hell would want to run out here?
And I said, lady, you're just missing the point. All you gotta do is turn around. See the mountains, smell the air, listen to the birds, just take in what's around you. And they were just nothing but the story. I didn't feel judged. I felt that they were stupid. They're just missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now, to tell you what Laramie is for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
And if you would have asked me before, I would have told you. Laramie's a beautiful town, small enough for everyone to have their own identity. A real strong sense of community, everyone knows everyone. And it's got a personality that most larger cities should though. But now, after Matthew, we've become defined by an accident, by a crime. We've become like Wacko, we've become like Jasper. We're a noun, a definition, a sign, and we may be able to get rid of that, but it'll sure take a while.
Journal entries. Members of the company. Andy Paris.
Moises called saying that he had an idea for his next theater production. But there was a somberness to his voice, so I asked him what it was all about, and he told me he wanted to do a piece about what's happening out in Wyoming.
Stephen Belberg. Lee told me the company was thinking on going out to Laramie to conduct interviews on what's going on out there. But I'm hesitant. I have no real interest in prying into a town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronick. I've never done anything like this before in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
Company has agreed that we should go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit nervous about taking a group of 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries cell phones. Have made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She's hosting a party for us our first night in Laramie and has promised to introduce us to potential interviewees.
I must tell you, when I first heard you were thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say you've just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. Most importantly, we've had so much negative closure on this whole thing. And the students, they really need to talk. When this first happened, they started talking, and the media descended, and all the dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they're free thinkers, and you may not like what they have to say. You may not like their opinions, because they can be very redneck. But they are honest, and they are truthful. So there's an excitement here. There's a dynamic here that I never had in the Midwest or North Dakota where I used to teach. Because there was so much Puritanism that dictated the way people looked at the world. And a lot of times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life, and my family's been here for generations. And when it came time to go to college, my parents couldn't really afford to send me. I wanted to study theater, and I knew that if I was going to go, I'd have to get in on a scholarship. And there's this competition, this Wyoming State High School competition, and I knew that if I didn't take first place in a duets, that I wasn't going to get the scholarship. So I went to the theater department at the university, and I asked the professor, I was like, I need a killer. And he was like, here you go, this is it. And it was Strangers in America. And I read the scene, and I knew that if I did a good enough job, I could win. And so when the time came, I went to my mom and dad so that they'd come to the competition. And you gotta understand, my parents come to everything. Every single baseball game, every single hockey game, everything. And they took me to their room, and they sat me down, and they said if I did this scene, that they wouldn't come see me in the competition because they believe that it's wrong, that homosexuality is wrong, and they believe this that strongly that they wouldn't come see their son do probably the most important thing he'd done to that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I had never ever gone against my parents before, and I was worried, but I decided to do it. And after the competition, all I can remember is me and my scene partner, we shook hands, and there was a standing ovation. Man, it was amazing, and I won, and that's how come I can afford to be here at the university. And my parents weren't there to see me, and thinking back, I go, why did I do it? Why did I go against my parents? Because I'm not gay, and why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer is, I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you guys know Mr. Christian? Maybe you can tell me.
Company member Greg Pirati.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange that the Wyoming sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
Instead of
Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
We stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie, and I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds was big then, so yes, there are a lot of us around, but I promise I won't stop you if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me, to no avail, what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
we're just passing through.
Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could really be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations, but as we drove to the downtown area by the railroad tracks, it still looked like a turn-of-the-century Western town. Oh, and on the University Inn sign, where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it read, "Hate is not a Laramie value."
Greg Pirati.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land. You could keep a pet cow, your horse, your little chickens. Just, have your own little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I could run around the house in my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were at school, and nobody could see me. And if they got that
Well,
close...
it's their problem.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right. In your all-togethers?
Well, yeah, honey. Why wear clothes?
How's he gonna use that in his play?
So this was a big ranching town.
Oh, not just ranching. This is a big railroad town at one point. Before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha. So now, it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad. I mean, what was it, in the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse. They'd shut a shop and they could build a complete engine.
They did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yep, she washed engines. Her name is Minnie. We used to, sing that song for her. You know that song.
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there.
But I'll tell you, Wyoming is bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has the big, high, what-do-you-do jobs, but here in Laramie, unless you're a professional, the bulk of the people are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've been either in the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. Now that I'll tell you, here in Laramie, there's a difference, and there always has been. What it is a class distinction. It's about the ones that are well-educated and the ones that are not. And the ones that are educated don't understand why the ones that are not don't get educated. That's why I told you before that my kids had to fight because their mother was a bartender. Never mind that I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging, that's a fact.
But here in Laramie, without the university, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Do I have to say it? It means shit out of luck. Oh Lord, you got that on your tape. Boy, you're getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So, let me just ask you, what was your reaction when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. I have a daughter that's on the sheriff's department. As far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or the other, as long as they don't bother me. And that's the attitude of most of the Laramie population. They might poke one if they were in a bar situation, they've been drinking. They might even smack one in the mouth. But then they just walk away. Most of them said they just say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
I say Marge probably knows a lot more, except she's even willing to let on. And we have to respect her for that.
Well, where are you going with the story anyways?
Oh, well, we still haven't decided. When we finish, we're going to try and bring it around to Laramie.
Okay then, there are parts I won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met with somebody who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time we had heard him called Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everybody?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I got a phone call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
And it's Matthew Shepard, and he says to me, can you come pick me up on the corner of 3rd and Grand? So I'll pull up to the corner to see who Matthew Shepard, is a little guy, about 5'2", I bet you 97 pounds soaking wet. They say he was 110 pounds, but I wouldn't have believed it. They also say he was 5'5" in the newspapers, but this man, he was really only 5'2", maybe even 5'1". But anyway, he comes up to the window, and I'm gonna go in steps here so you can better understand the principle of this man. He comes up to the window, and I ask him, are you Matthew Shepard? He says, yes, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew. And I don't want you to call me Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt, and I want you to know that I'm gay, and we are going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? And I said, how you paying? See, fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars, and for that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him down to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit, you know that? He always was, but I liked him because he was straightforward. See what I'm saying? Well, maybe gay, but straightforward. See what I'm saying?
I don't really know, How does one person ever tell about another? You really should talk to my sister Romaine. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time we called him Choo-Choo. Because we used to call him Matthew and then we called him Choo-Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I think of his incredible beaming smile. He'd just walk in and he'd be like, he made you feel great. But Matthew would stare people down in the coffee shop because he wanted to sit on the end seat so he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in that spot, he would just stand there and stare at them until they got up. Then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. That's all his main interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. That's the only TV station I ever saw his TV turned on to. Matthew was really smart in political affairs, but not too smart on common sense stuff. So he moves to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
To the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having trouble adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. So his mousiness, his shyness, began to give way to this person who was excited about this track that they were going to embark on. He was just figuring out wanting to work on human rights, and how he was going to do that. And when this happens, this person begins to bloom a little bit. He was starting to say, wow, there are opportunities here. There are things I can do in this world. I can be important.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before the attack. He called me up and said he joined the gay and lesbian group on campus and that he was really enjoying it. He was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. He was just really stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy to be there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was heading, towards human rights, which only adds the irony and tragedy of this.
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly, what do you call them? The queens, the gays, the queens, run around faggot type people? Nah. They're the kind of person that throws bale, hay, jumps on horses, brands them, and kicks ass. You see what I'm saying? As I always say, don't fuck with the Wyoming queer, because they will kick you in your fucking ass. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say here, because I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. I've lived up here some 40 years. And I don't think Wyoming people give a damn one way or another if you're gay or straight. That's just what I just said. Doesn't really matter, but you know, if there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is typically the case, you know, you look around, you start to wonder, who's getting what? See what I'm saying? Now, geez, it don't take a big, intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here,
Catherine Connolly.
was that I was the first out gay or lesbian faculty member on campus. And that was in 1992. So that wasn't that long ago. I was asked in my interview what my husband did, so I came out then. More a funny story. When you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do. And so, I was in my office, and I noticed that this woman called. I was expecting, you know, health insurance phone call or something like that, so I called her back. And I could hear her. She was working on her keyboard, clicking away. I said, you know, this is Kathy Conley returning your phone call. And she said, oh, it's you. And I thought, this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. I was like, uh-huh. And she said, I heard you came as a couple. I'm one too. Not a couple, just a person. And so she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming and wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And she later told me that she knew other lesbians who wouldn't be seen with me, that I would irreparably taint them, that just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I first came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Swanaker.
But I told myself people should live where they want to live. And there would be times I would go down to Denver to gay bars, and people would ask where I was from, and I would say Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men down there, so many gay men who grew up in Wyoming who would say, that was not a place I could live. How can you stand it there? I had to get out. But you know, every once in a while, there'd be a guy, oh gosh, I love Laramie, I really love it there. It's where I want to live. They get this starry-eyed look, and it's like, if that's where you want to live, then do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people stayed in small towns. It's easier said than done, of course.
Today, we are moving from our motel and heading for the Best Western.
Moise is confident.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Amanda Gronick.
Today we divided up to go to different churches within the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church, and we were met at the front of the chapel by the Reverend himself. This is what I remember of his sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, I have a simple truth that I like to tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 or 6 billion years old. Because what's a billion years, people will take? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Meade Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town, Baptist, Mormon. They're everywhere. It's not just Salt Lake. They're all around. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has a little different thing going on that irritates some folks.
Doug Laws, state ecclesiastical minister for the Mormon Church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. It wasn't something that just happened and some folks wrote in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be to the left side of that panel, so far left that I'm probably sitting by myself, is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. I mean, we're not even sure we're a religion. And to my right on the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established in this community. And God bless him, he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted because, when we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved, and we called them up, and they were not going to get involved. And it was like, we're going to wait and see which way the wind is blowing. And that angered me immensely. We are supposed to stand out as leaders, and I thought, wow, what is going on here?
God has set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn. What is it that God wants? So you study scripture, you look to your leaders, then you know what the bounds are. Now, once you kind of know what the bounds are, then you get a feel for what's out of bounds. There was a proclamation that came out on the family. A family is defined by a woman, a man, and children. That is a family. It's about as clear as you can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon Church, no leniency. We just feel it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, mostly the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show the rest of the world that it says here in the Bible. And most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And so how are you going to fight that?
I am a biblicist, which means the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe in it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around, tumbleweed, cement factory, and I said, what in the hell am I doing in Wyoming? And 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I'm doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaida Ullah. She is an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah. My parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf, and that's really changed my life for the better. Like, people say things to me like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? And it's like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know what I mean? So I'll be like, well, it's part of my religion. And they'll be, this is the worst part, because they'll be like, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And it's like, how am I supposed to go into the doctrine of physical modesty in my own spiritual relationship with the Lord, saying they're my pop and chips, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so unreal to me that, the group from New York would be writing a play about Laramie. And I was just picturing, you're going to be in a play about my town. You're going to be on stage in New York acting like you're us. It's so great.
Hello? Hello, my name is Amanda Gronick, and I'm here in Laramie working with the theater company. I went to the Reverend, your husband's sermon on Sunday, and I was hoping to speak to him about some of the recent events.
Well, I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views on homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence. But he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle, you know what I mean? And he has been just bombarded with press after this happened, and the media has been just terrible about this whole thing.
I know, it must have been just awful.
Oh yes, I think we're all just hoping this goes away.
Well, do you think I could speak with him maybe just briefly?
Well, all right, you can call him back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which is the last place that Matthew Shepard was seated.
The fireside definitely feels like a college bar. Pool tables and even a stage area for karaoke night. But still, the few regulars left in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
First person we talked to was Matt Nicholson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house. It was called Old Blue Front. And in 1870, Louisa Grandma Swain cast the first women's ballot in the free election in the world. And that's why Wyoming is called the Equality State. So what I want to do is reestablish my bar as Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. You know, I want to own a pool hall, I want to own a restaurant, and I want to own a gift shop, and I want to do all this shit, you know, because, well, every night's ladies' night. And so the Old Blue Front is basically what the fireside is now. It's the first step towards Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium.
So, what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
We had karaoke night, maybe 20 or 30 people. Matthew Shepard came in sitting right about where you're sitting, just hanging out. And, you know, if you want to talk to someone about it, you should really talk to Matt Galloway. He was the kid who was bartending that night. You'd have to meet him. His character speaks for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, I'll make this brief, quick, get it over with. What'll be everything? Factual, just as fast. Here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in, usual time, Tuesday nights. 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up, alone, sits down, orders Heineken.
Phil LaBrie, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken, even though you had to pay $9.50 for a six-pack. He'd always buy the same beer.
So, what can I tell you about Matt? Well, if you had 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I've ever been in, okay? And nothing to do with sexual orientation. Absolute manners, politeness, intelligence. Some people you just know. Sits down, offers an intellect, you know, please, thank you. Offers an intellect, you know, within the vocabulary. So he just kicks it there. Doesn't seem to have any worries like he's looking for anyone. Just enjoys the beer and the company around. Now, approximately 11:45, 11:30, 11:45. Aaron McKinney and Rose Henderson come in. You know, I didn't know the names then, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused. So they come in very stone-faced, you know, like dirty, grungy, rude, gimme, that type of thing. And as you know, they came up to the bar and paid for a pitcher in dimes and quarters. I mean, that's something you don't forget. $5.50 in dimes and quarters, that's a freaking nightmare. Now, Henderson and McKinney, they didn't seem intoxicated at all. They came in, just ordered a beer, took the pitcher back into the pool room, kept to themselves. Next thing I know, probably half an hour later, they're kind of walking around with no beer. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to ask if they want another one because they just paid for a pitcher in dimes and quarters. I had a pretty good feeling they didn't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. Matthew would like hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can say it was robbery. I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
Now, the next moment, I noticed Aaron and Russell had been talking to Matthew.
Aaron said that this guy walked up to him and said that he's gay and wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And then he got aggravated with it and said that he was straight and walked off. He said that is when he and Russell decided to go to the bathroom, pretend that they were gay, and get Russ in the truck and beat him up.
Okay, no. Instead that Matt approached them, that he came onto them, I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute that statement 100%. Refute it. How many 2 reasons why? 1, character reference. Why them? Why would he come on to them? He wasn't coming on to anybody else in the bar. They say he's a gay, he's a flaming gay, he's gonna come on to people like that. That's some bullshit. I mean, he never came on to me like, hello. I don't believe it. 2, territorialism is the word I'd use for it. And that's to say that Matt was sitting there, Aaron and Russ were in the back, and upon their first interaction, they'd been seeing the area that Matt had been all night. Who approached who by that?
But Matthew was the type of person, like he would never not talk to anyone for any reason. If someone came up to him and started talking, he'd just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Matthew never had any problem striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely at Love Plans. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible he could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was at the bar alone without any friends only made him that much more vulnerable.
So, what I'm saying, and this is basically what I'm testifying to, because you know I'm the key eyewitness in the case. What I'm testifying to is, I saw Matthew leave, and I saw two guys leave with him. I didn't see their faces, but I did see the back of their heads. And I saw them leave. At the same time, Russell and Aaron were no longer in the area. You do the math.
Actually, I think the DJ was the last one to talk to him that night. Gave him a cigarette or something. His name is Shadow.
I was the last person to talk to Matt at the bar. I was just bullshitting around my shit and he stopped me. I stopped him actually, and he was like, "Hey Shadow, da 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 da." And I was like, "What, man, you leaving?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, and this and that." But that's when I saw them two guys, and they stood outside. You could see it. They were standing there, and he was looking at them, and they were looking back at him, and I stood and talked to Matt for a good 10 minutes. And you see them guys get like worried, you know? Like anxious to leave and shit. So when it took off, I seen it. It was a black truck, a small truck. The three of them sat in the front seat and Matt sat in the middle. I didn't think nothing of it, and I figured them guys would do it like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney. Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron and I were good friends, so I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was shocked when I heard this. I'm like, I knew he was living out far at his trailer house, is what he told me. With his girl. They just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating, you know, because they had a kid. You see, that's the kind of person Aaron was. He was just 21 years old and he was running around with a kid. He was dressed in big clothes, like Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. But at the time I knew him, he was just a young kid trying to fit in. He just wanted to fit in, you know, acting tough, acting cool. But you could get in his face about it and he would back down, like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Anderson. Russell was so sweet. He was the one who was the Eagle Scout. His whole presence was just quiet and sweet. So of course it doesn't make sense to me. And I know people snap and whatever. And like, it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him at the Chuck Wagon too. And I remember like at the Christmas party, he was just totally drunk out of his mind. Like we were all pretty much just party time. He wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was still the same little meek Russell. I remember him coming up to me and saying, "When you get a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance?" Which we never did get around to doing that, but now I just want to shake him, you know? What were you thinking? What the hell were you thinking?
The fence. Been out there 4 times. I've taken some visitors out there. It's become a pilgrimage site. It's obviously a really personal and powerful experience to go out there. It's so stark and empty. And you can't help but think of Matthew out there for 18 hours in the freezing cold temperatures, isolated with that view, and my God, why have you forsaken me, comes to mind.
Company member Greg Parati.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the moment I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship to this young man. On the way back, I made sure that no one saw me crying.
Lee Fonikowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there by the fence. I don't think I'm up for it. I'll see if someone else can do it.
Well, I took off on my bicycle at about 5 p.m. on Wednesday from my dorm. I just kind of felt like going for a ride. So I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with the area. So on my way back down, I didn't know where I was going. I was just sort of picking the way to go, which now it just makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there was no way I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep, fast sand, and I wanted to turn around, but for some reason, I kept going, and I went along, and there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled it. I went over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I got up, and I was just kind of dusting myself off, and I was looking around, and I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt, and he was just lying there by a fence, and I just thought it was a scarecrow. I was like, Halloween's coming up. That was a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike, walked around the fence that was there. It was a buck-type fence, and I got closer to him, and I noticed his hair. And that was a major key to me. Noticing as a human being was his hair, because I just thought it was a dummy. Seriously. I even noticed the chest going up and down. Still thought it was a dummy. You know, some kind of mechanism, but when I saw hair, well, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house. I just ran as fast as I could and called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet. And I got out of my vehicle and I raced over and I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny, laying on his back, and he was tied to the bottom of the fence. I did the best I could. The gentleman that was laying on the ground, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in dry blood all over his head. There was dried blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I was going to breathe for him, and I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. His head was distorted. You know, it did not look normal. It looked as if he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working in the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in, and I don't think any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a very long time. Those of us who worked in big city hospitals have seen things like this. But we have some people who haven't worked in big city hospitals, and it's not something that you expected. You expect to see these kinds of injuries from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see such gross injuries from something like that. This horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see these types of injuries to come from someone doing this to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing I could do. I mean, if there's anything I could have done to help him, I would have done it. But there was nothing. And I just tried screaming at him at the top of my lungs, trying to get something out of him like, "Hey, wake up! Hello!" But he didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call the cuffing position, the way we handcuff people, and he was bound with a real thin white rope. It went around the bottom of the fence, about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I used my boot knife and I tried to slip it between the rope and his wrist. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is, well, you'd certainly like to think that it's somebody from out of town that comes through and beats somebody like this. I mean, things like this happen. Shit happens, and it happens in Laramie. But I think that if someone's been beaten repeatedly, I certainly think that it's something that offends us. That's a good word. It offends us.
He was bound so tight. I finally got the knife through there and I'm sorry. We rolled him over to his left side. When we did that, he quit breathing, and immediately I put him back on his back. And that was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me enough room to cut him free there. And I seen the ambulance unit trying to get to the location. And when the ambulance got there, we put a neck collar on him, put him on a backboard, and scooted him from underneath the fence. And then Rob drove the ambulance to Ivan's Hospital's emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew Shepard was brought in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, I guess they had gotten into a fight later on that night back in town. So, I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know that there's a connection at all. So, I tell Aaron to wait, and I go treat Matthew. So now, there's Aaron in one room of the ER, and Matthew in another, 2 doors down. Now, when we saw Matthew, it was very obvious that his care was out of our capabilities. Called the neurosurgeon at Pooja Valley, and he was on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. They were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of their bodies, and for a brief moment, I wonder if this is how God feels when he looks down at us. How we're all his kids. Our bodies, our souls, and I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, news reports started trickling in on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, a Laramie man, found beaten up out on the prairie, basically. Later on in the evening, they mentioned his name, and it's like, it's not the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not my student. It's not this person I've met. I was in the coffee shop.
Romaine Patterson.
And someone pulled me aside and said, look, I don't know much, but they say there's been someone who's been beaten in Laramie. And they say his name's Matthew Shepard. And I said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And he said, well, yeah, I think it could. So I called up my sister Trish and I said, look, tell me anything, because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story comes up on the Channel 5 news, and it's just like, boom.
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description, it's like, oh my God.
And it's just sick to your stomach, you know? Just instantly sick to your stomach. And I had to tell Romaine, yes, it wasn't. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what is overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
I found out about the incident Friday. I walk into class and boom, there it is in the branding iron. So immediately I head to the nearest newsstand, buy a Laramie boomerang, go home, you know, I bought that because I wanted to find more out about it, and go home. Before I can even open it, my boss calls me and he says,
Did you hear about what happened?
I'm like, yeah, I did.
Were they in the bar Tuesday night?
I go, yes, yes they were.
You gotta get down here right now. You gotta talk about this.
By this point, I was starting to get upset. But still, the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Rulon Stacy at Pooja Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. We got a few reporters here asking questions. And so we decided we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I'll do that, and we'll try and gather all the information that we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night, where they started speaking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson and he's like,
We've gotta go to the arraignment.
so we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being tried for the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday.
right around lunchtime. And I just took off. I said, I'm just going. It's just down the street. So I walked a few blocks, and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There are probably about 100 people from town there, and probably as many news media. By now, a lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids, local kids, who everyone from around here has some relationship to. And what I think everyone was really on pins and needles for was what would happen when the perpetrators walked out, and what happened. There's 200 people in the room at this point. They walk out in their complete orange jumpsuits and their shackles. You could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary by that point. Then the judge came in and did a reading. There was a reading of the evidence that the prosecution had. It's just a statement of the facts, and the statement of the facts was...
The essential facts are that defendants Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar. After Mr. Shepard confided that he was gay, subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied the victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both subjects were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes, both belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I don't think
both subjects
there was any one
credit
person
card,
left in
his
that
wallet
courtroom
containing $20 in cash, his shoes and other personal items, and obtained his address in order to later burglarize his home.
Ending with
both defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant Hing.
How could this happen? I think a lot of people just don't understand. And sometimes I don't even understand how somebody can do something like that. We have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state. And it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere else. That then you could create that distance. Like, we don't grow children like that here. Well, I guess it's pretty clear we do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment. My response was pretty catatonic. Not sleeping, not eating. Don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came in about the sheer brutality, motivations, how this happened. And then, quite frankly, the media descended and there was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the gem city of the place, is now an island. The cowboy state has been rednecks and Yahoo for sure. There are no more biggest per capita in Wyoming than there are in New York or California. The difference is that in Wyoming,
as a gay college student, like hospitalized and critically conditioned after severe beating, this is not even experience themselves as Wyoming rolls down.
Version would happen in our schools on a regular day basis.
It's a tough business, as Matthew Shepard knew and his friends all know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge. Yeah, it was hers. And we're talking hundreds of reporters, which really puts a dent in this town's population. There were news trucks everywhere on campus, everywhere in town, and we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are predators. Like this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist was like offended that he asked him for privacy. This is not how journalism started, like the Gutenberg press, you know.
I'll tell you what, when Hard Copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every single word I ever said on tape, so if they ever try anything funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, first-term Republican, up for re-election.
I'm outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait to see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
You've got the beginning of the news story, where they've got the graphics in the background, and they've got murder in Wyoming, and Wyoming's dripping red, like it's got blood on it or something. And it's like, what is this? This is sensationalism. And we're here going, wait a minute. We had the guys in jail in less than a day. And I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned,
Eileen and Gil Enya.
that we're not a good community, and we are. The majority of people here are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while, and I think the gay community took this as an advantage. Said, this is a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Now, had this been a heterosexual that these two boys decided to take out and rob, then this never would have made the national news. Now, my son is guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I do think that the media actually made people accountable because they made people think. Because people were sitting in their homes watching CNN and listening to the news and watching Jim Rather and going, Jesus Christ, well, that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here?
Matthew Shepard medical update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there and where there were maybe 2 or 3 reporters, there must have been 10 or 15 still photographers, another 20 or 30 reporters, and at least 10 video cameras. The parents had just arrived. I looked out there and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of his right ear. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated from 98 to 106 degrees. We've had great difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that there is something Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request for members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask you to respect our privacy as well as Matthew's, so we can concentrate all our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much. Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends Chassie Paisley and Kristen Price also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with the chief investigating officer on the case, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
The thing that bothered me the most was going down to Poudre Valley, down where Matthew was. Seeing him. Touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at dead bodies.
This boy is sitting here, fighting all his life trying to make it. I just wanted it so by the books, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head when I found it.
Aaron Kreifels.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I just want to, get it out. That's the biggest thing for me, is seeing that picture in my head. Because it's kind of unbelievable to me, you know? That I happen to be the person that found him. Because the biggest question for me, with my religion, is why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself. And I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So what that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me, having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the truck did not come after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing 20/20 hindsight to have stopped what occurred, and I keep thinking, I shouldn't have had my head down for those 20 seconds. These guys shouldn't have been talking to this guy like that. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So you study, and you spend hours and hours and hours.
You study and study and study.
You talk to your officers.
Make sure they understand.
And then you talk to your witnesses. And then you just keep coming back to...
I keep getting this flash of seeing Matthew, and I just wanted it so tight that there was no way they were going to get out of this.
one of the things that happened when I got to the fence,
Reggie, please.
there was just such an overwhelming amount of blood, and we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves, you know? You put them on, and they just kept breaking. So finally, you just run out of gloves, and you figure, okay, don't hesitate. That's what your mind tells you all the time. Don't hesitate. And so you keep moving, and you try to help Matthew find an airway, and that's what you do, you know?
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she first told me that she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought that was not a better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me Matthew had HIV. And the doctor said, you've been exposed, and you've had a bad exposure. Because you see, I've been building a lean-to for my llamas, and my hands had a bunch of open cuts on them, so I was kind of screwed, you know? You think, oh shoot, you know?
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? And they said, get up here. So I got up there and we started the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now they told me that's a medication, that if it's been administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop you getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair. Yeah.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Please understand that not one of us was mad at Matthew. But we maybe wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson, and you know, two absolutely human beings cause so much grief for so many people. The hit has been terrible for my whole family, but mostly for her and our kids.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now?
My parents told me, you know, and they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's just the parent things, you know. They're terribly proud of you because you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this, but you know, they don't want you getting hurt.
Like I say, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So finally I said, oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn.
They call me stubborn and I don't believe them. I just think, okay, I've heard your opinion and here's mine. I'm 39 years old. What are they going to do, spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
It looked pretty funny, you know? What can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that.
University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
Well, this was a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent me an email to me directly and said,
you and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty of the death of Matthew Shepard, just as the Germans who look the other way are guilty of the death of the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. Until and unless you acknowledge that Matthew Shepard's beating was not just a random occurrence, and not just the work of a couple of crazies, you have Matthew Shepard's blood on your hands.
And, well, I can't begin to tell you what that does to you. And it's like, you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know what this has done to me and my family and my community.
The first week alone, vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others. In Los Angeles, over 5,000 people gathered. And in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And the Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million viewers from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery.
Matthew Shepard, medical update, at 9 a.m. Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family would like to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concerns for Matthew. Thank you very much.
There are certain things when I sit in church.
Jedediah Schultz.
And the Reverend will tell you flat out that he doesn't agree with it. And I'm still learning about myself, you know, and I don't think I know enough about certain things to say, you know, something like homosexuality is right when you've been raised in a way that it's wrong. And right now that I'd say I don't agree with it. Yeah, I don't agree with it, but maybe it's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended for it to happen. And that's not getting in the way of being the other person. I'm not going to persecute a gay. It's not getting in the way at all.
It's preached in schools that being gay is okay and yada yada yada.
Conrad Miller.
And if my kids asked me, I'd sit them down and I'd say, this is what gay people do and this is what animals do, okay? And this is what I tell them. This is the life, this is the lifestyle, and this is what they do. And I tell them. This is why I believe it's wrong.
There are more gay people around than you might think. Murdoch doesn't bother anybody because most of them know damn well who to talk to. If you step out of line, you're asking for it. Some people are saying he made a pass at them. You don't pick up regular people. I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel better because it was partially Matthew Shepard's fault and partially the people who did it. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety.
Exactly, Salmon.
I think we all were, and I think it's because somewhere inside, we all knew that this could happen to us anytime. I mean, I'd be afraid to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection for my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
You know, there's this whole idea, you leave me alone and I leave you alone.
Jonas Soniker.
And it's even in some of the Western literature, you know, live and let live. And that is such crap. I mean, my friends tell me, even my gay friends bring it up sometimes, and I tell them that is crap, you know? Basically, what it boils down to is, if I don't tell you I'm a fag, you won't beat the crap out of me. What's so great about that? That's a great philosophy.
We went to a candle vigil,
Zubaida Ula.
and it felt so good to be with people who felt like shit. I keep on feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad, you know? And this guy, he got up there and he said, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, well, I'm saying it wrong, but basically he said, come on, you guys, let's show the world that Laramie isn't that kind of place. But it is that kind of place. If it weren't that kind of place, then why did it happen here? I mean, you know what I mean. That's a lie, because it happened here, so how could it not be the type of place where that kind of thing happens? That's just totally like looking at an Escher painting, getting all confused, it's just totally like circular logic. And we have to mourn this. We have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where shit like this happens. I mean, these are people trying to distance themselves from this crime. And we need to own this crime, I feel. Everyone needs to own it. We're like this. We are like this. We are like this.
This afternoon I was at the Fireside Bar and I ran into two friends of Erin McKinney's, Shannon and Jen. You guys both knew Erin well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out, I thought it was really awful. I don't know whether Aaron was fucked up or whether he was coming down or what, but Matthew had money. Shit, he had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. It's not right.
Well, I'm not saying he's a bad guy or anything, because he wasn't. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong times, the wrong things, and I'm not going to lie to you. There were some times when I was all messed up on meth and I thought about going out robbing. I mean, I never did, but yeah, it was there. It's easy money.
Aaron's done that type of thing before. They've both done it. I know one night they went to Cheyenne to go do it and came back with probably $300. I don't know if they ever chose like gay people as their particular targets before, but anyone that looked like they had a lot of money that they could outnumber or overpower was fair game.
Do you think there was any homophobia of any kind that was involved in it that contributed to some of this?
Probably. It probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay, because like the gay people that I've seen him interact with, he was fine. As long as they didn't hit on him. As long as he didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you get the impression that Aaron knew other gay people?
I'm sure Aaron knew other people that are gay. I mean, he worked up at KFC and there were a couple of people there that, yeah. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because I don't know, half the people I know here in Laramie are gay.
What would you guys say to Aaron if you could talk to him right now?
First, I'd ask him if he'd ever do any more tweak.
If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why did you fuck up like that? But I'd want to make sure he's doing good in there, you know? Probably just want to hang out with him, smoke a bowl with him. But he wants to be so bad.
You guys both went to Laramie High?
Yeah, can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more than collegiate exuberance and the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of an apparent anti-gay hate crime.
University President Philip Dubois!
Well, this was homecoming weekend, and there were a lot of people in town. And there was a homecoming parade that was scheduled. And then the students organized to tag on to the back of it, behind the banner supporting Matthew. And everybody wearing the armbands that the students had created.
I live in the center of town.
Harry Woods.
And my apartment has windows on two opposite streets. One goes north and one goes south. And that is exactly the route of the homecoming day parade. Now, on the day of the parade, I had my leg in a cast because of a fall, so I was very disappointed because I wanted to walk with the people that were marching for Matthew. But I couldn't, so I watched from my window. And it was just, I'm 52 years old, and I'm gay. I've lived here for many years, and I've seen a lot. And I was very moved when I saw the tag on the end of the homecoming day parade. About 100 people walking for Matthew Shepard. So then the parade went down to the end of the street to make a U-turn, and I walked over to the other side of my apartment to wait for it to come down south the other way.
I was right up front there where they were holding the banner for Matthew. And let me tell you, I never had goosebumps so long in my life. It was incredible. When I got there was thousands of people. Families, mothers holding their 6-year-old kids, tying these armbands around these 6-year-old kids, trying to explain to them why they should wear the armbands. It was just amazing. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever done in my life.
So about 10 minutes went by, and sure enough, the parade started to come down the street. And then I noticed the most incredible thing. As the parade came down the street, the number of people walking for Matthew Shepard had grown at least 5 times. The number of people walking had grown to at least 500 people. 500 people. Can you imagine? The tag on the end was larger than the entire parade, and people kept joining in. And I thought, thank God that I got to see this during my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
I haven't really been all that involved, per se. My husband's a highway patrolman, so that's really the only way I've known about it. Now, when I first found out, I just thought it was horrible. I can't. Nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. But the other thing that was not brought out, at the same time that happened, that patrolman was killed, and there was nothing. Nobody said anything about the old man that killed him. He was driving down the road and he shouldn't have been driving and killed him, and it was just a little piece in the paper. You know, my husband worked with him. This man was brand new on the force. But I mean, here's one of ours. And it was just a little piece in the paper. Now my feeling is that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint and making him as a martyr. But I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. Now, I didn't know him, but there are just so many things about him I found out it's scary. You know about his character and his spreading AIDS and a few other things. You know, being the kind of person that he was just a barfly. I think he pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Everybody's got problems, but why they exemplified him? I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder someone, you hate them. It has nothing to do with if you're gay, a prostitute, or whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Company member Lee Fondakowski. This is one of the last days on our second trip to Laramie. We recognize and conducting interviews nonstop and we're exhausted.
We are to meet with Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was hoping we could skip it all together, but we have to follow through to the end. So here we go. 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. Do you realize that? he served us well. And I don't mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I can't think of anyone who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. And I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, I was just this bold guy, you know, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in this community when this happened, and I thought, you know, should we call the bishop and ask him for permission to do the vigil? And then I thought, hell no, I'm not going to do that. Permission doesn't make it correct. Do you realize that? And I'm not knocking bishops, but what is correct is correct. You people are out here on a search, though. I will do this. I will trust that if you write a play about this, that you say it right. You say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew. They did do violence to Matthew, but you know, every time that you are called a fag or les or dyke, do you realize that that is violence? That is the seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely if you were to somehow take what I've said to cultivate that violence in others, even in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Andrew Gomez.
I was there. I was in jail with Aaron in December. Got locked in over Christmas. Assault and battery. 2 counts. I don't want to talk about it, but we were there. I was there trying to eat my Christmas dinner, trying to eat my stuff and my motherfucking bread and my little roll and whatnot. And I asked him. I was like, hey, homie, tell me something. Tell me something, please. I was like, okay, wait, I'm thinking how I worded this. I was like, why did you kill a faggot if you were destined to be a faggot later? You know, because think about it. Either he's going to get humped a lot or he's going to die. So why would you do that? Think about that. I just don't understand that. And honest to God, this is what he said. He goes, he tried to grab my dick. That's what he said. He's dumb, dog. He don't act like it was nothing. Now, I heard they was auctioning those boys off. You know, up there in the Max Ward, where the killers go. I heard that when they found out Aaron was coming to prison, they was auctioning those boys off. I want them. I'll put aside 5, 6, 7 cartons of cigarettes. Auction his ass off. I'd be scared to go to prison if I was those 2 boys.
Hello?
Reverend,
Yes, hello.
I believe your wife told you a little bit about why I'm calling to speak with you.
Yes, she did, and let me tell her. I don't think that I really want to talk to anyone about any of this incident. I am somewhat involved, and I just don't think...
I know, I understand. You know, I went to your service on Sunday.
You went to the services on Sunday?
I did.
On Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
You welcomed me, at the beginning, I believe.
I see. Well, let me tell you something. I am not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind, and that is not necessarily the views of my congregation, per se. Now, as I said before, I am somewhat involved. That the people in the case, well, one of the girlfriends of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has a visit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as for the accused, the 2 I mentioned before, They have forfeited their lives. We've been after the two I mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. Now one boy is put on suicide watch, and I am working with him. Until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice, I will work for his salvation. Now, I believe that they deserve the death penalty. I will try to deal with them spiritually.
I understand.
Now, as for the victim, I understand that that lifestyle is legal, but I will tell you this. I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, that he had a moment to reflect on a time when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him. And I hope that before he slipped into a coma, that he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate you speaking with me. About 11:30 that night, I had just barely gone to bed. Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said his blood pressure had started to drop. Well, let's wait and see. She called me about 10 after. He just died. And so I quick got dressed and came in and went to the ICU where Judy was, and she came up and she put her arms around me and I put my arms around her and we stood there. Honestly, for about 10 minutes. Just because what else do you do? And then we had to sit and talk about things, and we said, this is now public knowledge, and I'm going to go out and tell the whole world that this has happened, because by this point it was clear to us that it was the world. It was the whole world. And so Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out at 4 o'clock a.m.
Matthew Shepard medical update, 4 a.m., Monday, October 12th.
At 12 midnight, on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified the family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family again asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make decisions regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed guilt or stress from the family. He came into the world premature and left the world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home and hug your kids, and don't let the day go by without telling them that you love them." And I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it all on television. We've been up for like 72 hours and gone home and gone to bed for like half an hour and had to get up and come in again. And maybe it was in a moment of complete brain deadness while I was out there reading that statement that I thought about my own family and go home and hug your kids. She doesn't have her kid anymore. And there I am and I'm thinking, this is so lame. But then we started getting all these emails and letters, and most of them were really kind, but I did get this one. Someone wrote me and they said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients or just the faggots?" And as I told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle with which I agree, but having been thrown into this, I guess I really never understood the magnitude with which some people hate. And of all the letters that we got, there were maybe 2 or 3 that were like that. Most of them were, "Thank you for your caring and compassion." And Matthew had caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
Today I spoke with Dr. O'Connor to tell him he'd soon be coming back out for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. This is what he had to say.
I'll tell you what. If they put those 2 boys to death, that would defeat everything that Matt would be thinking about on them. Because Matt wouldn't want those 2 to die. He'd want to leave them with hope. H-O-P-E, just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see, the whole thing ropes around hope.
H-O-P-E.
The day of the funeral, it was snowing bad. Big, huge, wet snowflakes, and there were thousands of people when I got there. There was a lot of umbrellas everywhere, you know. And I remember there was 2 churches. There was one for the immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature. And then there was one for everyone else who wanted to be there. Still, there were hundreds of people outside who couldn't fit into either church. And I remember there was a park. And that's where these people were, yeah. They were there at that park. And that park was full.
The liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. May the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm that they have had.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
Like, trees fell down and the power went out for a couple of days because of it. And I thought, it's like some power of the universe, you know? Whatever higher force, you know, that was blowing storms was blowing this storm.
For our brother Matthew, we pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, I am the resurrection and the life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
Lord, you console Martha and Mary in their distress.
Harry Drake, Casper Star Trinity.
Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe you must separate the precious from the vile? What? You don't believe that part of the Bible? You stand over there ignorant of the fact of the Bible. 2 times for every verse it mentions God's love, it mentions God's hate. We wouldn't be here if this was just another murder the state was going to deal with. The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. This one is different. Because the fags are bringing us out here trying to make Matthew Shepard into a poster boy for the gay lifestyle. And we're going to answer. It's just that simple.
Amazing grace, how sweet.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we arrived at the Laramie County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was our defense.
You don't like that attribute of God. That perfect attribute of God. Well, we love that attribute of God and we're going to preach it. Because God's hatred is pure. It's a determination. It's a determination that He's going to send some people to hell. We're standing here with God's message. We're standing here with God's message. Is homosexuality, is being a fag okay? What do you mean that's not for you to judge? God doesn't hate fags. Why does He put them in hell? You see the barrenness and sterility of your silly arguments when set against some solid gospel truth? Barren and sterile, like the lifestyle of your silly arguments.
So our idea is to dress up like angels. And we've got these wings, they're like big ass wings. And there'll be like 10 to 20 of us. And we're gonna encircle Phelps. And because of our big ass wings, we're going to completely block him. So this big ass band of angels comes in, we don't say a fucking word. We just stand there and turn our backs to him. And we're a group of people bringing forth the message of peace and love and compassion. And we're calling it Angel Action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian's ready to walk the line with him.
When those old preachers laid their hands on me, it's called ordination. Mine is from Isaiah 58:1. Cry aloud, spare not. Lift up thy voice like a trumpet and show my people their transgressions.
And I knew that my angels were going to be bearing the brunt of everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view and he was going to be like pissed off to all hell. So I went out and bought all my angels earplugs.
Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Stager.
As soon as they started jury selection, everybody was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on the story, I hope I'm not called, or, oh my god, I've been called, how do I get off? Just wanting to get as far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they were going to have to be a part of that jury. And that's when I heard Henderson had to sit in while they questioned the prospective jurors, and one of the questions that they ask is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand that a lot of the comments were, yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yes, sir. No problem.
Yep.
Can you imagine hearing that?
juror after juror after juror.
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson. But I understand you wish to change your plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You understand, Mr. Henderson, that the recommended sentence here is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that they may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask how you wish to plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether sentencing will be concurrent or consecutive, I understand that there are statements to be made by at least one individual.
This is an excerpt from a statement made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your family since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day I have thought about Matt, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers, as we know that your pain will never go away. You have showed such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you have given us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we as a family hope that, as you sentence Russell, that you will do it concurrently 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, we humbly plead that he not be taken completely out of our lives now.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes, I would. Your Honor, Mr. and Mrs. Shepard, there is not a moment that goes by where I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm very sorry for what I did. You have my greatest sympathy for what happened that night. I hope that one day you will find it in your heart to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I'm very sorry for what I did, and I'm ready to pay my debts for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepard to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten, and in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well that he was there, perhaps having an opportunity to save his life, and you did not. Mr. Henderson, this court does not really believe that you truly feel any true remorse for your part in this matter, and I wonder if you understand the gravity of what you've done. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that sentencing be ordered as follows. As to count 3, that being murder, felony with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment equal to the term of your natural life. As to count 1, that being kidnapping, you are to serve a period of imprisonment equal to the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to be consecutive with count 2.
After the hearing, we spoke with Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years, and Russell's only 21, so I've known him his entire life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon Church, so when this happened, you can imagine this belief. After the hearing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was to excommunicate Russell from the church. And what that means is that your name's taken off the record, so you just disappear. Russell's reaction to that was not positive. It hurt him, and it hurt him to realize what serious of a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Russell. It's a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family.
A week before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker, the head of the theater department. She's producing Angels in America this year at the university.
And I think that's the focus the university has taken, that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to reach our students. And the question is, how do we reach them? How do we reach a state where there's some really deep-seated hostility towards gays? How do we reach them? This is the beginning. And guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents.
Jedediah Schultz.
My parents were like, so, plays you doing this year in school? And I was like, Angels in America. And they go, huh, that's in high school, that scene in high school? I go, yeah, and they go, huh, you got an audition for it? And I go, yeah, and we have this whole argument, and my mom was saying, homosexuality is a sin, and they had recently seen me in Macbeth, and like, I murdered this kid and Lady Macduff and these two other guys, and I go, Mom, I just played a murderer tonight. You didn't seem to have any problem with that. I swear, I've never prepared this much for a role in my life, ever. Not even close.
Not having to deal with the gay society in Laramie that much.
Detective Sergeant Rob Debris.
When we started working the case and actually talking to gay people, we found out a little bit about their underlying fears. And that's when it hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And I know, there's going to be a lot of people that hold with the old ideals. I was one of them 14 months ago. But I don't have to listen to it. And if you don't like what I have to say, what I think, that's fine. The door swings both ways. And I lost a couple buddies, and I'm okay with that. I'm more comfortable and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie Flutie.
And I was able to have the DNA test done. So they got me to Fort Collins, they drew the blood there, flew it to Michigan, and did all the DNA work there, and which was a week later, I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying Hail Marys.
You're just elated, and you think, thank God.
So what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. I was just happy, You're just so happy. And you think, yeah, I hope I did this service well. I hope I did it with some kind of integrity. So you're just really happy. And my daughters just balls.
They were so happy.
And the fours.
Oh boy.
We went out and got shit-faced. They all bought me drinks, too. It was great. And everybody hugged and cried, and, I kissed everybody who walked through the door.
Reggie, they don't even know that.
I didn't care if they were male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
Now what part of what I just said didn't you understand?
Get over it, Ma.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question that most of you have on your mind is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Calvin Richard, prosecuting attorney.
And it is the decision of the county attorney's office that this will most definitely be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it, but I'm not very proud of that. I was off and on and off. I can't say what I do. I'm too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. Yeah, because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe with all my heart, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I definitely don't want to ever see them walk out of Rollins Penitentiary again. I'll pay my little percentage of tax, my nickel a day or whatever, to make sure that his ass stays in jail, and that he definitely never walks into my bar again.
I don't really believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me. I don't believe that one person should be killed in redemption for having killed another. Two wrongs don't make it right.
How can I protest if the Shepherds want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere with that. But on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We didn't call him Aaron, he was called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney? How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now, our most important teachers must be Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. They have to be our teachers. How did you learn? What did we as a society do to teach you that? And, I don't think a lot of people will let them be their teachers. I think it would be great if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney. Docket number 6381. The Honorable Barton R. Voigt presiding. The court is in session.
During the trial of Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played a tape recording of his confession.
My name is Rob Debris, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that confession.
Okay, so you two, you and Russ, you go to the fireside. You're at the fireside on your own, right?
Yeah.
All right, so what do you do when you leave the fireside?
Some kid wander at home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer. Such a queer dude.
He looked like a queer?
Yeah, like a fag, you know?
Okay, how'd you meet him?
We wanted to ride home, and I just thought, well, the dude's drunk. Let's just give him a ride home.
All right, so when did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
Kind of talked about it at the bar.
Okay, and what happened next?
Drove him out past Walmart. We got over there, and he starts, like, grabbing my genitals. I was like, look, I'm not a fucking faggot. If you do that again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the hell he was thinking, but beat him up pretty bad. I think I killed him.
What'd you beat him with?
Blacked out. My fist, pistol, butt of the gun. I don't know, I had a few beers, and I don't know, it's like I could see what I was doing, but it was like someone else was doing it.
So what was the first thing that he said or that he did in the truck that made you hit him?
Well, he put his hand on my leg and slid his hand like he was gonna grab my balls.
When that defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I wanted to vomit, because that's like saying it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense when that guy killed Harvey Milk in Moscow, and it's the same thing.
As much of a part of me didn't want the defense saying it was gay bashing or gay panic. Part of me is really grateful, because I was really nervous they were going to say it was robbery or it was about drugs. So when they used gay panic as their defense, part of me felt very happy. Because if nothing else, the truth is coming out. The truth is being told.
Did he try to defend himself? Try to hit you at all?
Yeah, he tried his little swings or whatever, but he wasn't very effective.
So how many times did you hit him in the truck before you stopped where you left him?
Saved him 2 or 3 times. About 3 times with my fist. About 6 times with the pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Well, yeah, he was getting the shit kicked out of him.
Well, what'd he say?
After he asked us to stop, most all he was doing was screaming.
So you and Russ, what, you just dragged him over to the fence, Russ tied him up?
Yeah, I just remember Russ was laughing at first, but then he got pretty scared.
And was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah. I told him to turn around and don't look at my license plate, because I was scared he would tell the cops. Turned around and read my license plate. That's why I hit him a few more times.
Just to be sure. All right, so obviously you don't like gay people.
No, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
Really don't hate them, but you know, when they start coming on to me and stuff, I get pretty aggravated.
Did he threaten you?
This gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really.
Can I ask you something? Why'd you take his shoes?
I don't know. Now I'll never get to see my son again.
Well, I don't know. You'll probably go to court sometime today.
Today? So I'm just gonna go in there and plead guilty or not guilty today?
No, you're just gonna be arraigned today.
He's gonna die for sure?
There's no doubt Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So what are they gonna give me? 25 to life or just a death penalty and get it over with?
Well, that's not our job. That's the judge's job and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case, after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder, robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which meant that the jury could give him the death penalty. The jury said that they would defer to the family's wishes as to whether or not to pursue the death penalty. That night, McKinney's defense team went to Tribune Dennis Shepard to plead for the client's life. The following morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here's some of what he said.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day that he died. But in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6, 1998, My son wanted to show the world that he could win again. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son, my hero, lost. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep asking myself the same thing that I did when I first saw him in his hospital bed. What would he have become? How could he have changed his little piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. Matt actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, and your friend, Mr. Henderson, left him there alone. But he wasn't alone. He had his lifelong friends with him, friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who these friends are. First, he had the same stars and moon that we used to watch together through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. And I feel better knowing that he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral has focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. People have said, enough is enough. I miss my son, but I am proud to be able to say that he is my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been stated that Matt was against the death penalty. Both of these statements are wrong. Matt believed that there were crimes and incidents which justified the use of the death penalty. I too believed in the death penalty. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, now is the time to begin the healing process. To show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you life, as hard as it is for me to do so, because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious. And I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I grant you life in the memory of one who no longer lives. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
Me and Debris hugged and cried, and everybody had tears in their eyes. You're just so grateful, and Mr. Shepherd was crying, and then that got me bawling, and everybody just
This is all we've lived and breathed for a year.
This has been our case daily, and now it's just over.
Maybe now we can go on and we can quit being stuck, you know?
It just hit me today. The minute that I got out of the courthouse, that the reason that God wanted me to find him is we didn't have to die out there alone. And if I hadn't come along, they wouldn't have found him for a couple of weeks at least. So it makes me feel real good that he didn't have to die out there alone.
I'm just glad it's over. I really am. Testifying on a trial was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And don't get me wrong, I love the stage, I really do. But it's tough, because what you have is you have lawyers questioning you from this angle, and then you have to funnel answers over to where the jury is. And that's tough for me because, you know, I'm a natural conversationalist, so when I talk to somebody, I make sure I make eye contact with that person. But it's hard when you literally have to scoot over, adjust your position, just to get answers to where the jury is. But hey, I was able to do that multiple times over the course of my testimony.
On our last trip to Laramie, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz play the role of Pryor in Angels in America. After a performance, he and I spoke.
I didn't, for the longest time, let myself become personally involved in the Matthew Shepard thing. It didn't seem real. It was so way blown out of proportion. Matthew Shepard was just a name instead of an individual. I don't know. It's just weird. It's so weird, man. You know, I just feel bad, you know, for the stuff I said, for the person I used to be. That's why I want to hear those interviews from last year. When I said all that stuff, I don't know. I can't believe I said all that stuff about homosexuals, you know? How did I ever let myself think that you were any different from me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And that's obviously changed from the fact that I really realized my role in things. So now instead of going to school for music, I'm going to go to school for communications and political science. Because I have a career in political activism. And anytime I think about any of the speaking that I've done or the Angels, Matthew's like guiding this path which is like for me to walk down. And it's like, anytime we get to a door, he opens it. And he's like, okay, next step. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
This is Jonas Slonaker.
Change is not an easy thing, and I don't think people were up to it here. We got what we wanted. Those two boys got what they deserved. We shot down the villains. We look good now. The OK Corral. We set the prostitutes on the train. The town's cleaned up, and we don't have to worry about this anymore. You know, it's been a year since Matthew died, and they haven't passed shit in Wyoming. At a state level, any town, anywhere, no one's passed anti-discrimination laws or anti-hate crime legislation. Nothing. What's come out of this? What's come out of this that's concrete or lasting?
We all said we would meet again. One last time at the fence.
I've been up to that site in my limousine, you know? And I remember the night that he and I were driving around, Matt turned to me and he said, "Laramie sparkles, doesn't it?" If you go where he was, if you sit where he was, Laramie does sparkle with a low-lying cloud. It's the blue lights from the airport, and they're bouncing off the clouds, and it just goes tss, 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 right over the whole city. I mean, it blows you away. Matt was right there in that spot, and I can just picture what he was seeing in his eyes. The last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We've spent the last 2 days packing over a year's worth of material and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times in the past year and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck, and when we asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. To show it's not the hellhole of earth would be nice. But that is up to how you portray us. And that in turn is up to how Laramie behaves.
As we were getting off the phone, she said to me,
Now you take care. I love you, honey.
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about this whole event. Galloway offered me or anybody else a place to stay if and when we came back to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to whether there'd be any open auditions.
We left Laramie at about 7 in the evening. On the way to Denver, I glanced in the rearview mirror to take one last look at the town.
And I will trust that if you write a play about this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.